Gerard, great to chat to you. I just want to first off say the American economy, they always say elections are about the economy. You know, it's what the people feel the economy is going. What is the American economy like, and does it really have an outcome in this election?
Well, it's mixed, right, because you have undoubtedly good, solid growth. We've had good, strong growth in the US economy for the last few years. The economy has recovered all of the losses that it had in the pandemic, much better than any other economy in the world, actually. Unemployment is low, growth has been strong, so it's actually been relatively a good performance. The flip side, the downside is that, of course, we've had inflation. Like everywhere in the world has had inflation. But here in the United States, you know, prices went up on average by about 20% from early 2021 to now. And people feel that. They feel that much more in effect when they feel like, you know, whether the unemployment rate is going up or down a little bit, because they go to the stores, they go to the shops every day, and they see that prices have gone up by much more. You know, we had this long period, as the rest of the world did, long period of basically flat prices. And then we had this surge in inflation after the pandemic, probably made worse by some of the policies of the Biden administration. Prices went up, wages didn't go up initially by as much, and they've just about caught back up. Average wages have caught back up with prices. So that's in political terms, that's the most important thing, that people feel that they haven't enjoyed the real wage gains that they are used to because there's been this big surge in prices.
But the odd thing is, normally governments get thrown out here, Australia, around the world, if unemployment spikes. Unemployment has not spiked. People have jobs to be able to afford those price increases. But that doesn't seem to be playing out in these election campaigns.
Correct. So unemployment again is low, it's stayed low, back, it's around about 4%, which is, historically quite low. The problem is, again, we've been in historically unusual circumstances in the last 5 years. We haven't seen inflation as the kind of inflation we've seen right now since the 1970s. So, and in the 1970s, inflation was a scourge, and inflation, toppled governments everywhere in in Europe, in Asia. So, and that's what we've been back to here. We've seen this surge in inflation, the highest rate of increase of prices that we've had since the 1970s. And that makes everybody feel, whereas unemployment, as bad as it is, typically, even when it's really bad, only affects a relatively small proportion of the population. Inflation affects everybody. Everybody goes to the store and they see that the price of eggs and milk and washing detergent has gone up by 20, 25, 30%. And they feel that has a big impact. And that's why opinion polls tell us that Americans feel very bad about the state of the economy, even though we've had growth and relatively low unemployment.
So you've written that Donald Trump, when he left office in 2020, approval rating 34%, really in the cellar. You also have said he should not have been able to politically recover. He has been able to politically recover. And you've said it's due to basically the ineptitude of the Democrats, almost really the calling out of the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton would have called it.
Look, Donald Trump, exactly, 2021, after January the 6th and the horrors that happened around then, was dead and buried politically. He was gone, right? He had as you say, a historically low approval rate. People understandably thought what happened at the end of his presidency was terrible. The Democrats had an amazing opportunity, having been elected, Joe Biden been elected, to heal the country, to bring together and actually to drive a stake through Donald Trump's political heart. But they failed. They didn't do that. They did all kinds of things. They spent a huge amount of money, which helped inflation rise, as we've talked about. They opened the border, so we've had this massive influx of illegal immigrants in the country, which people are very unhappy about. They kind of messed up on foreign policy. The withdrawal from Afghanistan in August of 2021 was an absolute disaster. And on top of all of that, they then tried to sort of secure their political advantage by going after Donald Trump. They went after him with these lawsuits, tried to criminalize what he'd done. So they actually gave him an opportunity which he really didn't have back in the beginning of 2021. And that's the reason. I think the Democrats honestly are responsible for the fact that they are responsible more than anybody for the fact that Trump is back, and Trump may well be elected, just about to be elected president.
So if you look back to when Trump was the president, do you sense that he learns from that term, if he does become the next president of the United States, that he learns in terms of the way in which he runs the administration and the way in which he even runs the US economy?
Yeah, no question. He was elected in 2016. He wasn't expecting to be elected. It was a surprise. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. His team thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. He hadn't really prepared himself for office. So it was kind of an ad hoc administration in many ways. He hired people that, happened to be available, Republicans that were available, some of his close friends and family and all of that kind of stuff. This time around, they've been preparing. He's been preparing. He's got a much clearer plan about what he wants to do. He expects to win. He's got people who are fiercely loyal to him and will support him. So, yeah, he has a pretty clear idea. Now, it has to be said, and this is the other context we're dealing with, that the economy under Trump, certainly from 2017 to 2020, before the pandemic hit, was in great shape. We had no inflation, we had low unemployment, we had strong growth, stock market was incredibly good, the world was at peace, at relative peace. So that period works out very well for the Americans. This time around, we'll see. I mean, he's got plans that, economic plans that I think could be quite disruptive for the economy. I think he's got a lot of political plans that he'll pursue. He'll definitely crack down on immigration, which the American people want. He may also have plans to pursue his own, if you like, kind of personal vendettas against people, and I think people are worried about it.
I was going to ask you about this because it's often been said that you listen to Donald Trump and to what he says on the campaign trail, because often that will be manifested in office. So things such as having a say over interest rates, taking away the independence of the central bank, the Federal Reserve, or introducing tariffs as an alternative to taxes, which hasn't been seen since the early 1900s. Yeah. The question is whether this is dangerous policy for America or whether in fact this is revolutionary breakthrough policy for America.
Yeah, I think on the Fed, the one thing you have to always understand with Donald Trump is he says a lot of things. He doesn't necessarily mean them, right? He's been very critical of the Fed and says he would like the Fed. Chairman Jay Powell is up for a replacement anyway a year after Donald Trump, if he wins, takes office. He'll replace him. I don't think, however, people I speak to, people who are close to Trump, the economists, especially those who might become Fed chairman, I don't in the end think the Fed is in any way going to be subject to political control. So I think we can put that down to sort of Donald Trump's rhetoric rather than any kind of reality. The tariffs is a much more interesting proposition. He did impose tariffs, obviously, when he was elected first time in 2017.
So making Chinese goods more expensive to try and bring manufacturing back into America, exactly, to bring jobs into America.
And he's trying to do much more. He proposes to do much more now. China will face, really punitive tariffs, but he wants a tariff on goods from all over the world, from Australia, from Europe, from everywhere. He wants to impose at least a 10%, maybe even a 20% tariff. Now, the question I think with Trump, again, you never quite know whether he means what he says, whether he's serious about that, because I think if he's serious about that and he does try to impose tariffs like that, it could be damaging for the economy. I think what I understand from what Trump's doing, this is kind of a bargaining tactic, right? Trump is the master of the deal, the art of the deal. He literally wrote the book on it. He wants countries to open up their markets more, to let US exports thrive elsewhere. And this is, I think, part of a kind of a stick to make countries, especially countries like China and Japan, the European Union, do a little bit more to open their markets to US goods. And if they don't do it, he's threatening them with these tariffs. We'll see if it actually happens. It may happen. If it does happen, I think, as you say, we haven't seen this for 100 years or more, and it didn't really end well the first time. Yes. So it could have bad implications for the global economy. I suspect, again, it's much more about a bargaining tactic with Trump, trying to get what he wants from other countries.
And yet, many people would suggest that the world could be on the brink of another massive boom, fueled by technology, fueled by artificial intelligence, fueled by American technology, specifically those NVIDIA fast chips. So this is the environment that a new president could very well take on.
Well, look what's happening here in the United States. Again, we talked about this. The economy is growing relatively well. What's interesting about this growth is that unlike any previous period of growth in the last 20 or 30 years, it's investment driven. You talked about NVIDIA, this AI revolution that's taking place, the amount of investment that's going into data centers, into the chips that NVIDIA makes, into all of these various spin-offs from the core AI. AI is taking over everything, is dominating every business. That's led to a massive investment boom, the likes of which we haven't seen here in the US. And I think, the rest of the world is going to catch up. US is way ahead there. China's doing well too, but the US is really leading that. And yeah, we could see this. Now, I do think, whatever one thinks of the tariffs and whether or not actually imposing tariffs would be good for the global economy, it probably wouldn't be. What I think we are seeing is part of a story we've seen, and this applies to AI and to the chips business too, of countries essentially reshoring, as they call it, bringing businesses back home. The boom in the global economy in the last 30 years was to some extent, to a large extent, led by companies investing overseas, taking advantage of relatively cheap labor.
Cheap Chinese goods, right?
Exactly, cheap. That's gone. And we are now looking at growth driven by domestic investment, growth particularly in technology, AI, things like that. And I think whether or not we have tariffs, that is a trend that's in place, and I suspect that not just in the United States, but I think around the world that will continue.
Okay, so bring it back home to the politics and this election. What it seems to me is that Trump appeals to a sector of the economy, a section of the population that would historically not have voted for a Republican candidate. In other words, the whole still make America great again, bringing jobs back home, making American industry strong again. That appeals to unionists. That appeals to men in particular. And it seems as though this is almost split. There'd be families in America almost split in their political divides between women, abortion rights on one hand, men, jobs and the economy on the other hand. It seems really quite unusual in that way.
It's true. There's been, look, what we're going through here, as many other countries in the world are, it's very true in Europe too, we're going through a realignment, a political realignment. Look, traditionally, up until the last 10 or 20 years or so, highly educated people, professionals, if you like, the sort of the more affluent, what we might call the elite, tended to be conservative. They tended to vote for conservative parties. In the last 10 or 20 years or so, for a number of reasons, those people tend to vote for liberal parties. Here, for the Democratic Party, in Australia, for the Labour Party, in the United Kingdom, for the Labour Party. We've just seen that in the election in the United Kingdom. And the working class voters, who were traditionally Labour voters, are now voting increasingly for conservative parties, the Republicans here in particular. And I think that is a trend that is going to continue. That the issues now are partly cultural. It's partly about, national identity. It's partly about dealing with some of this sort of woke stuff that people are unhappy about. It's partly about the sense that, especially white working class people in this country feel that they've had a pretty hard time for the last 20 years, which they have, both economically and socially and in every other respect. So Trump has been really effective at being able to take advantage of that and turn the Republican Party into a much more broad-based, if you like, heavily working class party. He's also been able to appeal, very interestingly, given some of the things that are said about him, he's been able to appeal to minorities too. So he's probably going to get the highest share of the black vote that any Republican has got in the last 50 years. He's getting a higher share of the Hispanic vote, which is very important here. So all of this is, part of this broad political realignment we're seeing. We'll see the results next week, but I think it's going to be, again, it's not just in the US, it's global, and we are, we have an emerging political system built around cultural issues, built around issues of national identity, and Trump is really very much the avatar of that.
Gerard Baker, great to chat to you. Great to catch up with you in Times Square, and many thanks.